Alright, back again, Luke here, and today what I thought we could do is that long-awaited video, and that is talking about apartments and moving in Japan. Now for this video here, I'm going to talk a lot about my experiences and moving around West Tokyo in particular, so some of these things may not apply to the northern parts or the southern parts of Japan, but specifically my experiences that I've had in West Tokyo, and if anyone is thinking about moving around this area, you might run into these kind of problems or these kind of situations as well, so hopefully they'll help you out a little bit. But nonetheless, talking about moving around in Japan here, I've had a lot of questions about people asking me, Luke, why do you move around so much? And, why don't you just stay in one specific area? And there are many different reasons for that, some of it being job-related stuff, and others being, the location and the rent constantly being changed. Sometimes in Japan, there's a rental fee that can be changed by the owner. Each owner is different, so it doesn't apply to everywhere, but generally speaking, you have a specific fee, you have some gift money that you have to pay to the landlord in a lot of situations, which is paid every time that you renew your contract. In Japan, there are so many different details when it comes to renting an apartment and so many different fees that it can be quite overwhelming. Generally speaking, you have to pay 1 month or 2 months gift money. And this gift money is something that's traditionally been done from back in the day when there was no place to live. People would generally give the landlord some gift money saying, thank you for letting me stay here. And the gift money will be around 1 month's rent or 2 months' rent. And that gift money is non-refundable. Then you have on top of that the security deposits. Now the security deposits are something that are generally not refunded. They'll refund maybe a quarter of it. Sometimes you can get a half of a refund back, but you won't get a full refund. But this is another fee that they charge. Sometimes they'll charge 2 months security, sometimes 1 month security. It depends on the landlord. Once you get that out of the way, then you have the realtor's fee. Now, when you go to a real estate agency in Japan, they usually will charge 1 month's fee. So it doesn't matter if your apartment costs 80,000 yen or $800, or if it costs 200,000 yen, like $2,000. No matter where you go to move, the landlord will wind up taking 2 months or 1 month's fee, but the realtor will take 1 month's rent. And it doesn't matter at all. There's no set fee. For example, the realtor will automatically only take like $800. No, it's always going to be 1 month's rent. So if you live in a cheap place, it's 1 month's rent from there. If you live in an expensive place, it's 1 month's rent. The things that the realtor does doesn't really change. So those are some things to look out for. When it comes down to my experience that I've had recently in Japan, up until now when I've moved around, I've never really had any big issues. But recently, a lot of the landlords have decided that they don't want to go with a guarantor. Now, a guarantor is somebody like a Japanese national who will vouch for you, say that this person is okay to live in an apartment. I will state that this person is, not a criminal. Kind of like a reference that you would give on a resume. That's what the guarantor is in Japan. And it used to be any kind of Japanese national was okay. It could be your boss, it could be a girlfriend, it could be a wife, it could be anyone. But a lot of realtors nowadays, they want a guarantor company. And this is where I started to have trouble. Now, I had found a couple of places that I was really interested in, and I was thinking about moving in. I got all of the paperwork in, and when being a foreigner in Japan, you have to do a lot of extra paperwork. So you have to have paperwork from your job, basically saying that you've lived at current residence for at least 3 years. You have to have the paperwork from your job, including your salary, paid taxes. You have to show that you paid the local taxes. In some cases, you have to show that you're on either the country's insurance program or the company's insurance program. Having a driver's license or something like that does help. Being able to speak Japanese or the language is also another plus, but these are some of the different kinds of paperwork that you'll have to submit. And one thing that has never changed, at least up until now, is the landlords will also ask about your nationality. So which country does the person come from? And it's perfectly legal here. It's not any kind of racism, or it's not looked as a racist kind of thing in Japan. But from other countries or outside an outside perspective, it really does look like it's kind of racist, and it makes you feel a little bit dirty inside. But they'll ask you, so what what country are you from, and you know, what's your purpose for living in Japan. These are some things that the landlord will always ask, and it's something that the realtor might automatically say. For my situation too, even though I've lived in Japan for 10 years now, and I haven't really left the country, the realtor had, every time he called up the landlord, he said, "Oh, gaikoku no kata desu kedo," which means like, "Oh, he's a foreigner, you know, is it okay?" And then sometimes there would be an automatic no, and he would hang up the phone and he would try and dial another place. So if you're trying to find a place to live in Japan, don't be surprised if you find a place that you like, but the landlord says no automatically. That's just something that happens. Going back to the guarantor, now in Japan there used to be just a regular guarantor was okay, but now they want a guarantor company, and it's called a Hosho Gaisha, which is a guarantor company in English. And this guarantor company is basically something that the landlord chooses. They do all of the work as far as getting the money for rent. They take care of any trouble if there's any problems from the resident. They'll do 24-hour service as far as locks and things like that. But the landlord just gives all of this responsibility to the guarantor company. Now, the guarantor company should be something that's pretty easy. You have to pay one month's rent to the guarantor company in order to get them to sign off. And if the landlord is okay with a Westerner or a foreigner staying in their apartment, then through the guarantor company now wants a guarantor. And this is the part that doesn't make any sense. So when I found my place, I had found a couple of places where I was turned down just because I was a foreign resident, and I found a couple because that I was turned down for because I didn't have a guarantor company. It wasn't the fact that I didn't have a guarantor, but I didn't have a guarantor company. And to get inside the guarantor company, this is more difficult because guarantor company wants a guarantor, which means your boss, or it has to be somebody who's willing to vouch for you or take over the rent if something were to happen to you. Now, this may seem all cut and dry and really simple, but a guarantor company also wants the guarantor of a family member, or if you're in a relationship, if you're married, they want the spouse's company or spouse's parents to be a guarantor as well. So you need twice as much paperwork as before. Before, when you just had a regular guarantor in Japan, you could just have a spouse, her family could sign off for you, or your boss could sign off for you, but nowadays it's just getting really, really technical and really difficult. And a lot of the Japanese companies nowadays, the boss doesn't want to sign off as a guarantor because that means all of the responsibility will fall back on him. So I had the situation where my boss just did not want to do it, did not want to sign off on it. So I was trying to look around to see who I could find as a guarantor on my side because as far as, you know, on the other side, it was okay. It was just me being a foreigner. I just could not find it. So it was suggested to me to go to a UR apartment or look at UR apartments. UR apartments are apartments that are made for residents or expats, you know, foreigners, foreign war veterans, things like that. But these apartments are available to all Westerners and all foreign people. And getting into these UR apartments, they're huge, they're massive. They're, imagine like a huge hotel that's just filled with Western and foreign residents. That is what these UR apartments are all about. You only have to pay 1 month's rent, but unfortunately the locations are few and far between, and it can be a little bit tricky trying to get into one because sometimes you have to go on a waiting list or something like that. But they are available, so for those of you out there who are trying to get into a place in Japan, UR housing, just UR, is probably the best bet I can say for trying to find an apartment in Japan where you don't have to go through any sort of real estate agent, or you don't have to go through any kind of reference or have a background check or any of this guarantor stuff. It's just you sign the paperwork, you pay 1 month's rent, 1 month's security deposit, and you're all set. But yeah, as for me, I just had to go through a lot of red tape and a lot of paperwork to finally I was able to get the apartment that I have now. The landlord wanted 2 months rent. He also wanted 1 month's security deposit, and the real estate agent wanted 1 month's rent, as well as the guarantor company wanting 1 month's rent. So I wound up paying a total of 864,000 yen, which equals out to almost $8,600 to move into my apartment. That was from start to finish, and for 1 month. So after that, then my rent, started in. But it just, all that work to get into one place is just really difficult. And it took a lot of money, took a lot of time. But now I'm finally situated in here. Some things that can be negotiated with Japanese realtors or the landlords is the gift money. You have the reikin and the shikin. And these can sometimes be negotiated to like 1 month, or 2 months, 1 month. Depends on if the realtor wants to negotiate or if the landlord wants to negotiate. But if not, you have to pay it all. So unfortunately, that was my case here. But nonetheless, I was able to get this apartment, and it just a lot of red tape. And unfortunately, the fact that I had lived in Japan for 10 years still didn't have any sort of bearing on the final outcome. Finally, since I was able to get into the apartment, there hasn't been any trouble. I haven't had any problems with the landlord or anything like that. But just the initial startup process, the fear of having a Westerner or a foreigner living in an apartment building, and the residents too around have a big fear of Western people because they have a tendency to be noisy or a tendency to cause trouble, or at least that's the stereotypical image. So it really takes a lot of kind of convincing, and it takes a lot of time to get somebody to allow you to stay in a Japanese apartment. But if you're going for a guest house, one of the smaller houses, residence houses, where there's only foreigners or there's only Western people. I use foreigner a lot because it's used a lot in Japan, but foreign residents living in Japan, you can find a smaller place which is maybe only the size of a shoebox, but it's really easy to get into. You'll wind up sharing a house with other people, or getting into the UR housing. This is probably the easiest way to go. The way that I chose was obviously the more difficult one, but when you're looking for convenience, being closer to the station, or being in an area that's really nice, or being in an area that has a lot of stores, then you have to pay a lot extra and you have to go through a lot more paperwork. But yeah, nonetheless, that's just a little bit of some background here on what I had to go through as far as my apartment goes. Once again, if you're living in the northern part of Japan or you're living in the southern part of Japan, it may be quite different in either area, but for the western part of Tokyo, as of right now, these are some of the things that you might have to go through if you're looking to stay in a apartment that is owned by a Japanese landlord. Other than that, if you're looking for one that's just a regular guest house or a shared house or UR apartments, you'll probably be able to get in there quite easily with just 1 month's rent and 1 month's security deposit. And sometimes the bills are paid for. They're all included inside with internet, electricity, gas, and water. Whereas this here, living in these kind of apartments, everything is separate, so you have to pay it all on your own. But nonetheless, hopefully that was a little bit helpful for you guys. And that's about all for me for right now. Like always, I'll put up another video here soon. So thanks for watching.